recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I move that the report be adopted by the House.
Thank you very much. I see here there is a request for declaration, and I will allow the Honorable Hansinger. Oh. All right, according to my documents, I don't have a person who's introducing this report of the bill. Is there anyone, chairperson or somebody to introduce? I don't have a name. For the declarations to the bill? Okay, thank you. It's not a train smash if there is, it's not introduced, because we do have speakers here. The Honorable Hansinger.
Thank you, House Chair. The unanimous decision of the Portfolio Committee not to proceed with the RABS bill should be seen as a victory for the people of South Africa. A success for current and future road crash victims, families and caretakers, a huge relief for each and every vehicle owner contributing to road crash compensation by buying fuel for service providers, stakeholders, road accident fund, employees, treasury, and many more. Estimate calculations of the cost to introduce RABS show 20 billion rand per annum. By adding the next layer of consequential costs, RABS exceeded the available budget of 30 billion rand per year by an exceptionally large margin. Given the realities of an existing constrained budget, the only way that RABS could have functioned would have been through the limitation of rights and benefits. Limitations of rights and benefits that are boldly to be found, hidden discreetly in the suggested claims procedure and cunningly camouflaged in unnecessarily sophisticated and mathematical benefit formulas, with common law being removed, a no-fault system and less checks and balances. RABS is a bad idea in design and expression. Over years, the DA consistently opposed RABS, describing it as a solution, but not the only solution. We selected 5 final arguments that directed this report. RABS failed the public participation process. 76% of civic submissions in 9 provinces amongst 981 attendees did not support RABS. Secondly, RABS is out of touch with realities in townships and rural areas. How can we expect a vehicle crash victim to self-compile, self-prepare and self-submit claim documents to a centralized somewhere head office? Under 18 and over 60-year-olds are excluded with complete disregard of income levels at the time. Informal sector owners like taxis, traders, hawkers, vendors, as well as all illegal income earners are not recognized and all would have been treated as zero income. As such, RABS is ill-conceived and anti-poor. Given the existing fund, the legal principle of vested right, vehicle users would have had to finance 2 compensation schemes at the same time for over 30 years. Naturally, with near immediate and regular fuel price increases, vehicle owners cannot be burdened with a dual system. Instead, we should look at an insurance-based system and focus on ways to reduce fuel expenses for everyone. Over the last 7 years, at nearly every occasion, I ask for proper costing and reliable actuarial projections to evaluate the financial implications of RABS. To this day, nothing more than a thin financial opinion has been presented, a document which dismally falls short of adequately assessment, fair comparison, and convincing financial relevance and reliability. In the fourth instance, therefore, RABS carries no empirical quantum backing to support consideration, let alone approval. In the last instance, we underlined that it is unacceptable and immoral to indemnify the wrongdoer. Given our bad road use track record and general shameless behavior on roads, our focus should be on decreasing crashes and to improve law enforcement as a measure to stabilize claims, certainly not with a no-fault system. In fact, most countries have changed back in recent years. After a 7-year battle against RABS, I want to thank my team colleagues in different political parties and various specialists with whom I've worked closely. We have spent hours in efforts to build understanding and calculate implications. Also, to the parliamentary advisory and legal staff and officials of the department. Also, lastly, to the Transport Portfolio Committee, who today submit this unanimous report not to proceed with RABS, showing that one does not fix something by replacing it with something worse. I fully commit the DA as part of this team to fix the road accident fund with real solutions as a combined effort. This will complete the story and be the real victory for South Africa. I thank you.
Yeah.
Mhlonishwa Noluchungu.
Yeah.
Well done.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
As a belief, make a kopa utlosa background ya how kapila before tswela pele I'm sure levels. Honorable Fabans do need directly. Ma'am Malichungu.
Thank you, Chair.
Can you please,
Chairperson.
Honorable Malichungu?
Yes. Can you hear me, Chair?
Ona le phoso ngwana manko tlose background ya ka mo morao. Re tswele pele. Background ya re tswele pele. Or tima o ka nna wa mute camera wa tswela pele ge go na le problem ya gore o e tlose.
Chairperson, can you hear me?
Kamnandi mama, Quebec.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chairperson, the EFF agrees with the decision of the Portfolio Committee to reject this bill, and we are unpleased with the fact that it had taken such a long time to arrive at this decision. It just required basic application of the mind to have realized that this bill was never going to pass constitutional muster, that it was irrational, reckless, and offended basic principles of natural justice. The Road Accident Benefit Scheme bill may have its origins in the correct assessments of the less than ideal functioning of the Road Accident Fund. The fact that benefits take long to reach the victims, the fact that lawyers oftentimes pocket most of the money, leaving road accident victims with little to take care of their ailing health, and the fact that Road Accident Fund itself has been mismanaged over the years. The solution that this bill sought to introduce were, however, pretty ridiculous. Firstly, it sought to have a no-fault compensation system wherein even those who cause accidents on the road would be in a position for claim for benefits. So people who kill people on the roads as a result of their negligence and recklessness would be entitled to benefit under this bill. At the moment, Road Accident Fund has been financially struggling for the past 2 decades. This bill was going to add unnecessary burden by providing for the compensation of negligent drivers. It also sought to give powers to administrators to determine what medical treatment road accident victims need, which healthcare providers can be used. This had the potential of condemning poor citizens to incapacitated public health care while protecting the rich and ensuring that they have access to better quality health care. It also proposed to cut off loss of support claims after 15 years or at 16 years of age, potentially leaving elderly road accident victims in need. The provision of regulating the role of lawyers in the claims for road accident benefits still need to be pursued, perhaps through the amendment of the Road Accident Fund Act. It cannot be that lawyers are the law unto themselves on this matter. We have seen many cases of people injured on the road left with nothing because the lawyers pocket most of the money and cheat people out of their benefits. The EFF is in support of the committee decision to reject this bill in totality. I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Honorable Sitole, IFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson and members. The rejection of the Road Accident Benefit Scheme bill by this Parliament offers us a sign of relief that we have not passed through a section of legislation for the mere fact of masking the issue contained in the Road Accident Fund. From the outset, this bill has been contentiously and has not only faced objection by opposition party, but even the members of the ANC as well. The IFP has always maintained that the REPS is not something South Africa can afford due to the high and added strain it would place on our fiscals. Moreover, the bill opens further possible gaps for more corruption in government. With regard to Road Accident Fund, it is our belief that we need to fix this system first and incorporate some of the gaps that allow unscrupulous lawyers to benefit of the suffering of road accident victims. To this end, we believe that the RAF must incorporate simplicity and fairness to both victims and the state. It needs to be amended to allow ease of application from victims who have valid claims. We believe that legally representation is permissible only when victims of the RAF have not found the relief they desire. The IFP fully support the committee recommendation in rejecting the bill, as it is of the belief that we need to fix the problems in the Road Accident Fund. Sibona ukuthi i-Road Accident Fund ifanele ukuthi ilungiswe lapho eyonakele khona ukuze sithi masikhuluma kuncedwa abantu bazi ukuthi kuncedwa abantu hayi ngabameli kodwa ngokuthi abantu bona uqobo bazi ukuziyela ku-Road Accident Fund baphinde futhi bona uqobo bakwazi ukubona ukuthi imali abayitholayo i-right for bona. Ngalawo mazwi inkatha iyasapota ukuthi le bill ichithwe. Ngiyathokoza.
Thokoza mina Mhlonishwa. Isikhulumo esilandelayo ngumhlonishwa uSwart in the House, ACGP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP rises in support of the committee report in rejecting this bill. And whilst I'm not a member of the committee, over the years I have been involved in the proposed RABS bill. And the decision that the committee has taken to rather look at amending the RAF Act is the correct decision in the best interest of all South Africans. And I would like to commend all the members. This must be historic, unanimously rejecting the bill at the second reading point. I'd briefly like to touch on some of the issues as to why we also reject it. The preamble to the bill states that its essence is to create a reasonable, equitable, and sustainable effective benefit scheme, which would provide financial support to reduce the income vulnerability of persons affected by injury or death from road accidents. Now, in our view, the bill and the scheme, which it shortly established, were fatally flawed and failed to the contrary, would have resulted in extreme hardship on future victims of road accidents, particularly those who are the most vulnerable in society, including children, widows, and the poor. Reasonable and equitable as pointed in the bill, go hand in hand. And there can be no rational basis to suggest that it is reasonable or equitable to support condemning seriously injured children to a lifetime of abject poverty and suffering, with no prospect of achieving a reasonable standard of living. The ACDP also believes that and has reservations about the drastic move, as pointed out by other speakers, to move to a no-fault system for injuries or deaths arising from motor vehicle collisions. And we note that the Minister of Transport is seeking to criminalize all drivers who have any trace of alcohol in their blood. In view of this, how can it ever be acceptable that a drunk will to claim? The inclusion of these drivers means also that the number of claimants would almost double, adding billions of rands in claims. In addition, it would result in an existing system and a new parallel dual system running parallel for at least 25 to 30 years, and that is totally unacceptable. To make matters worse, Section 35 totally removes any civil claim for damages, and the right to claim due and proper compensation is set out within our Constitution and cannot be taken away. The net result of this benefit scheme would have been that the injured, innocent victims will be made to pay for guilty drivers' actions with reduced compensation and no claims for legal and medical advice being rejected, and the ACDP supports the report. I thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Sheikh Imam Mansour. Honorable Sheikh Imam, are you still there? No. Any other party that wished to make a declaration before ANC? Thank you. We move. The Honorable McDonald from the ANC. Honorable McDonald. Honorable Vessels, yes.
Apologies, Chairperson. Pete May's name was given for to make a declaration. He was now trying to speak, but there was a technical problem. I apologize for that. If you could embrace him and give him an opportunity, please.
Yes, met plezier. Gaan aan. Is hy teenwoordig?
Yes, but he's muted, Chairperson.
Let Vessels, okay.
Can you hear me, Chairperson?
Jy kan maar aangaan,
Ja, ons met die padongelukkefonds se skuld vergelyk met die van Eskom. Die padongelukkefonds wat uit brandstofheffings gefinansier word, se skuld gaan eersdaags meer wees is die van Eskom. Dit neem ongeveer 3 na 5 jaar vir 'n eis om afgehandel te word. The Honorable Chairperson, Mr. Zwane of Portfolio Committee on Transport, earlier this year issued an instruction to the leadership of a road accident fund to go and fix the road accident fund. The leadership responded and said a very important thing, that the victims of the road crashes should be the primary focus. Dit is 'n baie belangrike ding wat gebeur het. Die regskoste alleen was ongeveer 10 miljard per jaar. Dit is betaal deur die padongelukkefonds aan hulle prokureurs. Die skuld van die padongelukkefonds was in Maart 2020 324 miljard. Die beste manier om skuld te delg is om uit die howe te bly, want ons almal weet hoe hoog die kostes is. Daarom die uitvoerende, die acting waarnemende uitvoerende lid het 'n belangrike stap geneem deur 84 prokureurs se leers terug te vra en hulle af te dank. Alle nuwe kontrakte met prokureurs is gekanselleer. Die kostes hierdeur is baie verminder en dienslewering het ook verbeter. Daar is 'n baie goeie verhouding op die oomblik tussen die prokureurs van die kliënte as ook die padongelukkefonds en eise word baie vinniger ook afgehandel. Ek wil net graag noem vir u dat een van die redes waarom ons nie glo aan die padongelukkevoordele skema nie is under RAPS, benefits will only be limited to drastically reduced structured benefits to make it affordable. The Freedom Front Plus cannot see why general damages can't be retained. Under RAPS, the administrator has a wide discretion, no accountability towards the victims, and can suspend benefits at any time and direct which doctors to use. One must realize that when RAPS is introduced, it will have to run and fund it parallel to existing road accident fund. Ons kan nie 'n dubbele stelsel bekostig nie. Dit meen betaal meer vir minder voordele. Die Vryheidsfront ondersteun die komitee om weg te doen met die padongelukkevoordelefonds en dat daar eerder wysigings aan die bestaande wetgewing moet kom. Die Vryheidsfront se siening van derde party versekering as deel van die oplossing sal ook geïnkorporeer moet word. Maar die belangrikste van alles is dat ons moet ongelukke in Suid-Afrika verminder. En die enigste manier is om ons dit kan doen is deur die departement van vervoer wat daarin hard moet werk. Ek wil amper sê ek ondersteun die minister met geen alkohol nie. Baie dankie.
Baie dankie Afbarelet. Die volgende spreker is Afbarelet Manu van die ANC.
Honorable House Chairperson, Chief Whip, Members of Parliament, good afternoon. The report in front of us on the Road Accident Benefits Scheme Bill indeed has been a unanimous decision by the committee to withdraw it. However, it is our view that the department together with us will relook at it so that we can ensure that all the concerns that have been raised by the colleagues and the opposition parties are addressed. It is our view, therefore, that there is a need to attend to the big fiscal hole that is within the road accident fund as it stands now. We cannot sit back and fold arms and see that one of the biggest fiscal risks that we are facing is within the road accident fund. It is therefore the committee's view that as we withdraw this report, we will be sitting tirelessly to find a lasting solution so that the victims of road accidents cannot be left in the lurch. We do also understand the fact that many of those that are beneficiaries currently are people who have always benefited, and there are people who have always been in the forefront of objecting any kind of transformation of the system. We are therefore resolute, committed, that through the committee, we will relook at all this and come back to this House with a refined report. We will be consulting National Treasury such that when we do come back to this House, we will come back in unison as we have come back today. Chairperson, we thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manu. Honorable members, the motion is that this report be adopted. Are there any objections? So the report is ondersteun. Baie dankie. Ons gaan voort. The secretary will read the second order.
Second reading, Road Accident Benefits Scheme Bill.
As there is no speakers list, I will now put the question. Are there any objections to the bill not being read a second time as recommended by the committee?
No.
No objection to that. Therefore, the bill will not be read a second time. We'll now ask the secretary to read the third order.
Consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities on the filling of vacancies on the National Youth Development Agency Board.
Thank you. May I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party?
House Chair, thank you very much, and honorable members. House Chair, I move that the report of the Portfolio Committee of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities on filling of the vacancies of the Board of the National Youth Development Agency be referred back to the committee for further consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I now put the motion. Are there any objections?
Honourable Chairperson,
Honorable Mulder.
we would like to make a declaration.
Okay. The declaration that the report is being referred back. Thank you on that the report being referred back. Okay, thank you. I'm going to allow you, Honorable Mulder, even though the report is still going to come back to the House. Because, yes, I'm going to allow everybody who wishes to. But let's bear in mind that the report will still come back to the House after further deliberations in the committee. Let me allow the FF+.
Honourable Chairperson, a declaration will be made by the Honourable Breed on the virtual platform. Thank you.
Geen probleem. Achtbare lid Breed, gaan aan.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the NYDA is nothing else than another expansion of the ANC. Even more aptly put, an ANC Youth League branch. It is just another talk shop that they can fill with their cadres kids to ensure the lap of luxury these children have become accustomed to is maintained. According to the report that is referred back, the Portfolio Committee is confident that all candidates recommended for the appointment have an understanding of the NYDA's mandate. And this statement is 100% true and most probably the only part of the whole report that I can agree with. Because the mandate of the NYDA is nothing else but the partisan agenda of the ANC. And if you look at the candidates for the board, the majority all have ANC ties.
Honorable Brett Natabiki, Honorable Malsoni.
House Chairperson Barot, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt the speaker, but I do now feel I have to intervene as this is an abuse of the rules of Parliament. As the report has been referred back and the Honourable Brett is giving her declaration on the actual substance of the report. Now, in the House, you can't do that when the actual substance of the report has been referred back. So I'm afraid that I am going to have to call for you to call order, because otherwise every single party must then have the opportunity to then give a declaration as if the report was before the House, which it is not.
Recognize me to Chair. I stand to support what Honorable Mazuni is saying. Consultant.
Thank you very much. Let me, before I allow the Chief Whip to come up with a point of order. Honorable members, I was also reluctant to allow declaration, but I consulted with the table and I was told it's allowed. Now, the language of the declarations that are coming. It's more on the content of what is still going back. I thought it was something else. So I am all advised now by the NA table that let's not do declarations because the report is going back.
Honorable Chairperson, may I address you?
Yes, Honorable.
On the order paper for today, order number 3 is consideration of this specific report. That's on the order paper. But now the Chief Whip of the ANC is standing up and saying she wants this report to be sent back to the committee, and she wants the House to approve that. Surely parties should be allowed to express themselves in terms of the proposal made by the Honorable Chief Whip. Should we just accept that? No, we want to express why we are saying what we are saying, and I think you should allow that.
Honorable Matsoni, we got, let me allow the table staff to advise me. The first incident of this nature, and I'm going to allow time to do the correct thing. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. After all the advice and what you have said, I think it is my time now to use my discretion. And my discretion is that there won't be declarations on this because it is still going back to the committees. And if members feel that I'm doing the wrong thing, you know what to do. I'm taking my discretion. Let it not come back here. If you feel that the ruling is wrong, let's follow the correct procedure. That's my discretion. And as such, I'm asking again, do we have objections to the proposal in the motion that was raised by the Chief Whip of the majority party?
Yes, Honorable Chairperson, the Freedom Front objects to that, and we call for a division.
I'm going to allow that because my question is the objection. Honorable members, I'm giving you 5 minutes before the debate. I mean for the bells to be rung, sorry. 5 minutes, can you ring the bells for 5 minutes? Thank you very much, members. The division having been called, the bells have been rung for 5 minutes. Honorable members, the Speaker has determined that in accordance with the rules, a manual voting procedure will be used for this division. Firstly, in order to establish a quorum, I would request the table to confirm that we have a requisite number of members physically and present in the chamber and on the virtual platform to take their decision. Party whips will then be given an opportunity to confirm the number of their members present and indicate if they vote for or against the question. A member who wishes to abstain or vote against the party vote may do so by informing the chairperson. I have confirmed with the table staff that we do have a requisite quorum and we will now proceed. The question before the House is that the motion as raised by the Chief Whip of the majority party be agreed to. I will now allow the voting to commence, and anyone who is not logged in now will not be allowed. Those in the chamber, the doors are locked. Are you ready to give us the numbers, the whips of the tables? And we will also confirm the numbers with the ICT before we announce them. so that we are sure that the people that are on virtual are actually that number. May I start with the ANC?
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, in the House here in National Assembly Chamber, ANC has 26 members physically present here. On the virtual platform, the ANC has 153. Kongezelekile 10. Kuno 10 ngaphezulu. Ibe 153. It's 153 plus 26, which gives us a total number of 179. We support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mina nginilaleli naseniphikisana ngoba i-ICT izangitshela amaqiniso. UDA?
Thank you, House Chairperson. There are 7 members of the DA in the physical House. There are 51 on the virtual platform, and we all vote in favor of this motion to have the report referred back.
Thank you. The EFF?
Thank you very much, House Chair. Ndiyakwazi uthetha ngoku because uniyelo kadile. So ndiyasaba ngoku. But anyway, we are 27 chair on the visual platform, and we are supporting the report to go back to the committee.
Thank you very much. IFP?
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. At last count, we had 9 members on the virtual platform, and we agree with the withdrawal of this report. Thank you.
Thank you. FF Plus?
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. We are 4 members in the House, 6 on virtual, total 10 voting against.
Thank you. ACDP?
Thank you, House Chair. We are 1 in the chamber and 2 on virtual, and we vote in support. Thank you.
Thank you. UDM? Namhlanje abekho. ATM? Good. 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 Good is good. NFP? Udliwe connection in a load shedding. AIC?
1 in the chamber, no 1 on virtual. Work for the motion.
Kube uqinisile ukuthi ukhona ku virtual ngoba siyacheka la. AIC? No. Cope? Kuphi baba? Mukoni? Uchenshite madulo. Like yeah.
Kennakletse a re kwane le bone. Tsobeng.
Ra leboga. PAC? Ra re kwane le bona or they are voting in the negative. PAC? Utsamaile ntate Nyoso? Aljama?
Al-Jamaa is 1 and we vote in favor, Honourable House Chair.
Ke a leboga ntate. A re emeleng dipoelo. And my colleague, the Honourable Frolic, will take over from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson.
Just waiting for the results, Honourable Frolic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Frolic. The results are as follows. Abstain 0, no 11, yes 278.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. The motion of the Chief Whip is thus agreed to, and the report will be referred back to the Portfolio Committee. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
Consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on International Relations and Cooperation on the fourth quarter 2019-20 expenditure performance of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation and African Renaissance and International Cooperation Fund.
I now call upon the chairperson of the committee, the Honorable Mamba Shlale, to introduce the report. The Honorable Mamba Shlale.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Chair, I stand here in support of the report representing my party and the committee. South Africa's foreign policy is informed by very clear principles of democracy, equality, and human rights. Our foreign policy objectives set specific goals, and it outlines our capabilities working together with our key strategic partners the world over. The department is profoundly aware of the fact that it has a crucial role to play in contributing to a better life for all South Africans and delivering on the key national priorities of the South African government as it pursues the high-level objectives of its program of work. The department is increasingly operating in an unpredictable and volatile world, characterized by, among others, a shift to a multipolar world with a concomitant rise of new powers in the South, predominance of narrow and parochial national interests over the principles of multilateralism and international rule of law, and increased global interconnectivity. The total expenditure of the fourth quarter amounted to 1.615 billion, or 114% of the projected expenditure of the 1.414 billion. Expenditure was 14% higher than the projected expenditure for the period. The unpredictable foreign exchange portfolios and the ceiling on the compensation of employees were in driving factors, which over time have been negatively affecting the operations of the department, especially in the missions where the bulk of its activities take place. Nonetheless, the committee is of the opinion that overall, the department has performed according to the goals it has set itself for the fourth quarter of 2019-2020 reporting period. Performance in the fourth quarter highlighted challenges with adhering to the required 30-day payments to service providers, which is mandatory target set by the cabinet, as the practice impacts on the cash flow of small businesses. We are particularly concerned about the extract reason why this target is not being achieved, and we want this investigated. The committee is calling upon the department to expedite the coming into force of the Foreign Service Act. Most of the challenges facing the department would be contained with the strict implementation of the Act. This would, among others, address issues of municipalities and provinces signing agreements without due authorization from the minister. It was reported that economic diplomacy and image building activities undertaken by South African mission abroad were aimed at promoting, among others, the country's economic interests. They were also exploring investment opportunities, tourism promotion, skills development, and cultural exchange. Tourism promotion events and meetings held by missions abroad were aimed to boost tourism into South Africa and also to promote South Africa as a preferred tourism destination for business and leisure. The department concluded the three targeted and structured bilateral mechanisms to promote national priorities: the African agenda, the agenda of the South,
and to discuss various bilateral and multilateral international issues of interest. We encourage that the department would review of the structured bilateral mechanisms entered into by the country with other countries. These structured bilateral mechanisms should be advancing national interest and addressing domestic imperatives. Agreements signed with these countries would address particular foreign policy outcomes. We also welcome the fact that during the reporting period, the department had identified strategic organizations to which 65 qualifying South Africans were supported and placed in position of influence. That way, our national interest will find expression in the policies and influence outcomes of such organizations. The department continued to participate in various multilateral meetings to influence the outcomes of such meetings and remain an active member of the international community as espoused by the NDP. In pursuit of peace and stability, socio-economic, good governance and democracy in Africa, South Africa had targeted 2 events and they were achieved. These were the assembly of the ordinary session of the African Union and the AU Peace and Security Council sessions, where the Council's 5th report on the implementation of the AU Master Roadmap of practical steps to silencing the guns in 2020 was tabled. During the fourth quarter reporting period, the ARF processed 4 emergency projects proposals for funds to be contributed as follows: to the Special Fund for COVID-19, towards the Africa Center for Disease Control, for the Military Ombudsman Project, and for assistance for Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. These are noble causes within South Africa's diplomacy of Ubuntu. Other support was granted to support democracy and good governance in the SADC region, namely—
Honorable Chairperson, your time is now expired.
I have 1 minute 32 seconds remaining in the— Oh, thank you very much, Chairperson. We support the report and we ask the House to support the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
House Chair, thank you very much. We move that this report be adopted by the House. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. I've received requests for declaration of vote, and I will now allow one member of each political party wishing to make a declaration an opportunity to do so. The first party is the Democratic Alliance, the Honorable Chetty.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, members. DIRCO continues to preach to others on how to run their house, yet continuously serves as a shining example on how to make a mess of a multi-billion rand budget when your internal controls are reliant on factors that you're not in control of, and then factors that you can control but fail to. If only the voters were able to have a bird's eye view on how their party is embarrassing this country on a global stage. The irony, Chairperson, is that if you fixed the second one, then we might have more control over the first factor, which is the exchange rate fluctuations that tripled our budget abroad. The continued contestation of power between the Director General and the CFO is a matter that cannot be allowed to fester further, as this is also a contributing factor that hinders the department's progress. The ongoing failure by the department to remain within the stipulated ceiling for compensation of employees, and the justification blaming the over-expenditure on the fluctuating exchange rate as a song sung too often. Better and improved measures need to be explored by the department to ensure that over-expenditure is experienced due to additional work or goals having been achieved, and not just merely fanciful bookkeeping due to the volatile exchange rate. This department's other responsibilities are the many missions and embassies abroad, and therefore one would have expected that the officials should be fair with the volatile exchange rate and the foreign market that this department is responsible for, and have implemented international norms and standards. With a more stabilized government and a higher foreign investor confidence in the party leading this country, we could see more stability in the spending in these quarterly reports. The department's failure to ensure compliance with the 30-day notice period for service providers is of serious concern, as due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, many service providers are facing financial ruin, and this irresponsible act can contribute to an increase in the unemployment rate of this country. However, for now, we can sit and plan and budget and do all the nice preparations we want, hoping that the dollar will stay at 15 Rand in the beginning of the year. But then we see our slack response to the human rights atrocities in Zimbabwe. We see a watered down speech in Mozambique when a threat is upon our doorstep. But we have the audacity to say, Black Lives Matter. Matter to who? Which Black lives? We seem to suffer a bout of temporary amnesia when pre-1994, these very neighboring African countries fought for all South African lives to matter. Our quiet diplomacy on these issues are indeed deafening. This quarterly report is indeed a snapshot of our committee. It's a whole lot of words packaged in a very little detail with no action, and are still waiting for something to be proud of. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Msane from the EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, South Africa is the current chairperson of the AU under the theme Silencing the Guns. However, the continent is burning. The insurgencies in the continent are on the rise under this theme. Countries in the wealthiest mineral regions in the continent are burning. Mali is burning. Nigeria is burning. Somalia is burning. Mozambique is burning. And Zimbabwe is burning. As the continent looks outside for assistance, the imperialist forces are gaining more ground in the continent. France, America, and Russia are looking into assisting insurgencies in the continent. We all know the agenda of these imperialists. It is to create a problem, to provide a solution. The AU and its African regions will never contain these insurgencies, as the continent is swimming in corruption, abusive state security forces, and inequality. African states are still hiring private military security companies with a known history of trying to overthrow governments, like the company called Dyke Advisory Group, which is currently employed in Mozambique, instead of establishing a permanent African defense force. Africa is suffering from debt, lack of leadership, the abuse of power by the administration, weak political systems, and worst of all, sellouts. This department cannot give direction to the continent. This department can never be the required solution to the realization of the Abuja Treaty and Agenda 2063. African nationals who are seeking refuge in neighboring countries in the continent are mistreated, abused, and isolated without the protection of governments. Mama Africa is in trouble. The children of Africa are in a situation. As the world is battling a pandemic, Africans are battling corruption, state security abuse, women abuse, and femicide. And what do African leaders do? They place their knees on our necks. African leaders run to acquire debt from supranational bodies that seek nothing better for the continent, but to recolonize the resources of the continent. Therefore, the EFF rejects this report, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Schlangwa.
Honourable Chairperson, it will be Singh on behalf of the IFP.
Please continue, Honourable Singh.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. DERCO plays an integral role in South Africa's participation in the international community. In the period under review, we saw many of those relationships fulfilled in many ways, one of which involved the repatriation of South African citizens who were stranded abroad when the world went into lockdown due to COVID-19. This is largely owed to the establishment of 125 diplomatic missions in over 100 countries across the globe. The IFP appreciates that recent global events, including the economic downturn and the novel coronavirus, have significantly altered how DIRCO operates and services South African citizens abroad. Despite this, DIRCO officials managed to help citizens in various ways, from enabling the repatriation of mortal remains to the location of missing persons. However, the IFP is concerned by the department's over expenditure by 14%. The IFP is further concerned by what seems to be a trend of failing to pay service providers timeously. While the delays were aggravated by the lockdown, the department struggled with making payments according to the 30-day rule, even prior to the onset of the pandemic. The IFP is interested in the cause of this apparent trend, as well as any solutions to permanently address it, as our SMMEs that bear, it is our SMMEs that bear the brunt of the delays. The pandemic has also highlighted the need for up-to-date and reliable ICT infrastructure at DIRCO. And the IFP would like an update on the ICT modernization project mentioned in the report. The IFP also understands that the pandemic has stalled many initiatives that require international participation, including tourism and trade. We look forward to the reopening of our borders to begin recovery in those areas. In this regard, the IFP requests a visible and regular update of the department's plans. Chairperson, South Africa's position in regional bodies, particularly as chair of the African Union, places a unique responsibility on both DIRCO and the President to be responsive to regional issues as they arise. The IFP notes that peace and stability feature as objectives for both the Southern African Development Community and the AU in this period. However, we note with concern and condemn the apparent cherry picking by DIRCO when it comes to denunciation of international issues which threaten the peace and stability of our international community. We demand proactive, balanced, and even-tempered response in this regard. The IFP supports the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next declaration will come from the Honourable Sheikh Imam. Is the Honourable Sheikh Imam on the platform? If not, then I'll proceed to the Honourable Hendricks from Al Jamaa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Honourable Chair, we want to show our appreciation to the missions all over the world that is putting their best step forward to promote the country, and their hard work has not gone unnoticed, especially their position on Palestine, and President Mandela must be very proud of what they are doing. Honourable Chair, we need to do a bit more on the African Renaissance, and we need to build the Parliament for the African Union, because we need to work a bit harder so that we can have a United States of Africa. It does not look as if the current leadership at the Department of International Relations has the passion for a United States of Africa. Our own president doesn't have a passion. He's on record as saying that we can't have one president for Africa, and that is politics. That's not politics, Honourable Chair. That is the vision, the dream of the founding fathers of Africa, of the real Africa. Lastly, Honourable Chair, we're very worried about the fact that America has a presence in 22 countries of Africa. They don't agree with South Africa's position on Palestine, and they are fomenting unrest and trying to label the insurgents as of the Islamic faith. There's nothing peaceful about beheadings, about burning churches, and the kind of atrocities, for example, that are mentioned in Mozambique. It's a pity that words such as Ahli Sunnah wal Jamaa is coined by this department, because that actually means followers of the Prophet. There's no way that they can be followers of the Prophet with the type of unrest that they are causing. We support the report, Honourable Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Nkosi.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, I think I need to underline the principles on the basis on which we conduct our foreign relations. Firstly, is that we respect the sovereignty of all nations, we pursue world peace and friendship, and strive to prevent and stop wars. We're committed to a better Africa, free from impediments of underdevelopment and the legacy of both apartheid and colonialism. In that regard, we seek to advance a progressive internationalism and solidarity. On the basis of this, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation has noted an improvement from the time we took over in 2018 and 19. The department has made strides to improve both its internal operations and also its management from the near chaos that was inherited by the current minister. Listening to the DA, you may think that...
Honorable Nkosi.
Listening to the DA, you may think that the department has already collapsed. It is true that at the time we took over, there were very serious problems in senior management. But through the efforts of our minister and the deputy ministers, we're able as a committee to make particular interventions and directed that problems existing between and management at a top level in the department should be resolved. And we have received numerous reports that these have been resolved. So the proverbial two bulls in one crawl is beginning and has faded to a very large extent in the intervening period, particularly towards the close of the fourth quarter report. The department has been advised and to interact with the National Treasury to stem or to seek an understanding of how exchange rates affect its budget and develop the capacity to budget in line with volatile exchange rates. So to say that the department is incapable of understanding the exchange rates is not correct, because under the direction of the committee, the department is pursuing interaction between itself and the National Treasury to resolve this matter. We must say that the overall impact of budget cuts in government has affected the work of the department, particularly at an international level. It is not only this fluctuation rates that affect it, but it is also undertaking various events that are associated with promoting national heritage, with promoting tourism and trade that have been affected. And the department has undertaken that without losing focus on this, it will innovate to ensure that these objectives are met. I do not understand why the Black Lives Matter issue arises in the context of our debate. Perhaps we should indicate, Honorable Chetty, that Black Lives Matter everywhere, Black Lives Matter wherever the issues of racism, the issues of oppression of people, and targeted violence directed against Black people. But it is not these manifestations that matter for us, but it is the underlying issues that inform the treatment of people of color, Africans in particular, throughout the world that should matter for us. So we should address issues of racism, its manifestations, exclusions, and exclusionary policies that are pursued by various people, both in governments, in society, and in culture, that seek to undermine the importance of Black people. So you are correct, Black lives matter, and they do matter everywhere else. Listening to Honorable Msane, one may think that when you go across the Limpopo and our northern borders, you will notice nothing but a continent in flame. An acknowledgement is made by the department that there are pockets of instability in the continent. However, the AU, under the capable leadership of our president and other predecessors, have undertaken to pursue a process of making interventions where these conflicts occur. It is notable that in the North Africa, and particularly in Libya, the AU has made initiatives to try to resolve problems that afflict that region. So it is not true that the continent suffers under oppressive leadership continuously that is not focused. You will note that the continent is beginning to focus on the demographic and economic advantages that accrue to it in the next 30 to 50 years. That is why we have Agenda 2063, which will focus the continent on economic integration at the regional level, taking advantage of various value chains in promotion of intercontinental and intercountry trade to build the African economy and make it a competitive economy throughout the continent and therefore in the world itself. Regional integration approach has benefited the continent in as far as initiating peace missions and interventions, particularly militarily, to stem country conflicts. So the AU is seized with this responsibility and has not shied away from making inroads in seeking to create a peaceful continent that ensures that there's coexistence of countries, but also resolving internal problems where they occur. I agree with
Honorable Member, your time is now expired. Honorable Member, your time is now expired.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Once again, the connection was very, very bad, and there were several instances where we could not hear you very clearly. Our apologies for that, but it is a matter that is outside of our control. Honorable Members, the motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Are there any objections?
Chair.
Yes.
House Chair, can you note the objection of the EFF?
Objection of the EFF is noted. Are there any further objections?
House Chair, the objection of the DA, please.
It's noted. Are there any further objections? There's no further objections. With those objections, the report is agreed to. The Secretary will read the fifth order.
Consideration of report of the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education on submission from Griqua Peoples and Heritage on lack of a primary school.
I now call upon the chairperson of the committee, the Honorable Bingo Gigaba, who will introduce the report.
Siyabulela sihlalo. Sibulise kuwe sihlalo, sibulise na ku Chief Whip endlini. The Griqua's People's Heritage Site, the establishment of their community as people who had been living on the farm 371 Gongong as early as 1700s. This was a homogeneous community of Black, White, Indian, and Griqua, and the Griqua were later reclassified as coloreds. Intermarrying across racial divide was commonplace within the community. In the 1950s, the Indians and whites were removed from the farm and Black people were relocated to Pamberstad in 1967 and 1968. There was also a move to remove the colored in the early 1980s but this was met with resistance. Negotiations started for the purchase of the property for Griquas referred to Colours in the submission. There was a land claim and Farm 371 was not part of the claim settlement. The Dikgatlong municipality laid claim to the farm and registered it in the name in 2003. This caused a dispossession of an entire community. Noted among the challenges is that the area has no notable water, it has no sanitation, and it has no road infrastructure. The community advocated on their own behalf and succeeded in electrifying the farm via ESCOM. The community has no early childhood development facility and no proper health facilities. There's no development of any nature by any state organ, and the residents experience a constant threat of mining companies coming into the area without proper consultation with the communities, but approved by the CPA, by the Department of Mineral Resources, and the Dikgatlong municipality. Due to lack of a school in the area, learners commute to 5 different schools in the surrounding area, that is N. Presley Intermediate, in Longlands, Barclay West Primary, Barclay West Secondary, Musalaki Primary in Mataleng, and Burwetse Secondary in Mataleng. The submission then outlines the motivation for school in the area and the rationale that learners as young as 5 years old commute long distances to reach schools in surrounding areas. Many leave home at dawn during the winter months. It was also found that these learners experienced bullying on the school buses and constantly lost belongings during to commute. Most often, learners arrived home very late and only had time to complete homework before going to bed. The department alluded to serious constraints on infrastructure and budget in the province, which negatively impacted on building of a new school. The Northern Cape Department of Education was wholly dependent on conditional grants for infrastructure and received nothing from the equitable share to supplement the infrastructure grant. The department also made reference to the issue that the Department of Basic Education was paying for learner transport, and this was at the cost of the parents. Portfolio Committee was also informed that there are schools in the nearby vicinity. Now, the department did not see it feasible to construct a new primary school in Gongong due to the following reasons. The community size was that warrants an establishment of a viable school was that of 2,500 Gongong. Gongong, as per Stats SA 2011 census, only had population of 1,045. The current backlogs in terms of the norms and standards of public school infrastructure, which was done in November 2013, was estimated to cost at 12.5 billion. The department, however, was committed to continue to provide learner transport to the affected community in order to ensure that the learners had access to education. The department would be constructing a double ECD classroom at GN Presley Intermediate School, which was 4.6 kilometers from the furthest point of Gongong, and proposed that the grade R learners of Gongong attended school at GN Presley Intermediate School. Now, in the conclusion, we're saying that the Portfolio Committee on Basic Education, having considered the submission from the Griqua People's Heritage regarding the lack of primary school in their area, submitted to the Office of the Deputy Speaker on the 30th of October 2019 and referred to the Portfolio Committee on the Basic Education. It reports that the information and documentation submitted by the Northern Cape Department of Education in response to the submission addresses the matters raised in the submission. Although the Portfolio Committee is satisfied that the response is adequate in addressing the concerns raised by the submission, the committee further resolves that it would look to facilitate a collaborative, multifaceted, multi-departmental engagement on ways to assist the Gongong community to speedily address their challenges as outlined in the submission. I therefore move that the House accepts the report, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much. We support that Gong Gong. Must have a school Gong Gong.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip.
Griqua
Yes, request for declarations, and I will recognize the Honorable King from the Democratic Alliance. The Honorable King.
Voorzitter, die afstammelingen van Adam Kok, Harry die Strandroper, Otto Matto, Kretua die moeder van die Eerste Nasie, David Stuurman, David Kruipers het gepraat. Hulle verlang om hul geskiedeniskultuur en hul voortbestaan aan hul kinders te leer, sou deur hierdie primêre skool vervul was. Die verteenwoordiger van die Griqua People's Heritage, meneer Drift, het met passie en uit volle hart gepraat toe hy die agtergrond van sy mense op die plaas 371 Gong beskryf het. Dit was 'n gemengde gemeenskap wat uit wit, swart, Indiër en Griqua bestaan het. In die vroeë 1980s het die Griqua gemeenskap in Gong opgestaan teen die vorige regering wat hulle wou verwyder van hul grond en sodoende het besprekings begin om hierdie land aan die Griqua gemeenskap te gee. Met die ontstaan van die demokratiese regering tydens die landeis was plaas 371 nie deel van hierdie aansoeke nie. En in 2003 het die Diklagong munisipaliteit eis gelê op hierdie land. 'n Hele gemeenskap op die land van hul voorvaders het nie 'n sê gehad nie en enige poging vir hulp van die Noord-Kaapse provinsiale regering was met alle vermoë afgewyk. Voorsitter, hierdie agtergrond wys aan dat die Griqua gemeenskap in Gong se wense gehoor moet word en dis presies wat gebeur het. Dit is egter hartseer dat hierdie gemeenskap voel dat die nasionale basiese onderwysportefeulje komitee en nie die Noord-Kaapse onderwysdepartement 'n laaste uitwys wag. Voorsitter, neem ook kennis dat hierdie gemeenskap het geen toegang tot water, sanitasie en padinfrastruktuur. Hierdie gemeenskap het selfs elektrisiteit op die plaas ingerig met die hulp van Eskom. Daar is geen ontwikkeling vanaf enige staatsorganisasie en gedurig moet hulle opstaan teen mynbedryfsmaatskappye wat in die area kom. Leerders vanaf 5-jarige ouderdomme word daagliks na 5 verskillende skole vervoer wat 14 km ver is. Baie word teen die voordag opgelaai en kom baie laat by die huis aan en wat hulle nie genoeg tyd gee vir tuiswerk nie. Enige tyd vir ander naskoolse aktiwiteite kan egter nie gebeur nie. Ouers moet ook gedurig uit hul sak uitbetaal vir herstel van skoolbusse. Die Griqua People's Heritage het egter aangewys dat hulle is bewus van die finansiële toestand van die onderwysdepartement en is bewus daarvan dat die Noord-Kaapse onderwysdepartement nie die nodige hulpbronne het nie om die huidige oomblik om 'n primêre skool te bou nie, maar het wel aangevra dat die staat hulle wel help om hul land terug te kry. Gedurende hul voorlegging aan die portefeulje komitee het die Noord-Kaapse onderwysdepartement aangedui dat hulle nog sit met skole wat uit asbestos gebou was en kan slegs nuwe skole bou waar daar regtig 'n groot behoefte is. Die basiese onderwysdepartement sien nie die noodsaaklikheid om 'n primêre skool in Gong te bou nie as gevolg van die aantal van die gemeenskap wat onder 2500 is en die huidige agterstand van 12,5 biljoen rand in terme van die norme en standaarde vir publieke skoolinfrastruktuur. 'n Aanduiding was ook gegee dat 'n nuwe skool tans gebou word in Bakkie Wes en 'n dubbele klaskamer gebou word vir kleuterleerders by Geen Prestie skool wat 4,6 km ver van Gong is. Basiese onderwys is 'n grondwetlike reg en die wense vir 'n primêre skool in die Gong gebied is nie 'n onredelike versoek nie. 'n Versoek van die Noord-Kaapse Onderwysdepartement wel moet oorweeg in die toekoms gemeenskap. Die bou en ontwikkeling van 'n primêre skool kan egter nie plaasvind in die kwessie as die kwessie van die land nie uitgesorteer word nie. Hierdie is net 'n voorsmaakie wat vir ons in Suid-Afrika voorlê as dit by die grondwet kom om artikel 25 te verander, net soos die en die ANC dit wil hê, dat die staat moet alle land besit en ons, soos die gemeenskap van Gong, moet so slawe behandel word in die geboorteland. Voorsitter, ons aanvaar wel hierdie verslag. Gangangs.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker will be the Honourable Mashabela from the virtual platform. The Honourable Mashabela.
Thank you, Chair. I will be taking it in the place of the Honorable Mashabela.
Please proceed.
Chairperson, as we welcome the submission by the Griqua People's Heritage, which is a desperate plea for help from people for service that they should have in any case. All children in the country must have access to quality education. They must have access to schools not far off from the places they reside in. They must have access to good qualified teachers to teach them languages of their choice. The reality is that most children in rural areas are not afforded this right, Chairperson. The Department of Education have ignored the cries of parents in these areas for a very long time. We know in the Northern Cape is a deep rural province and the distance between communities is wide. This, however, does not justify the negligence with which the department has handled the request for a school in this area. And we think it is quite ridiculous that the department have premised their rejection of the need for a school in Gongong on a 2011 census, which shows that the areas had a population of just over 1,000 people. They don't take into account population growth between 2011 and 2020. They don't take into account the rights of children of the area to good education. It cannot be justified that 5-year-olds have to wake up in the wee hours of the morning, travel 12 kilometers just to get a grade R education. What a shame. We reject the notion that because there is a shortage of resources, then children must suffer. We reject this report with the contempt it deserves, Honorable Chair, and reaffirms that the rights of the communities have to have a school they have requested needs to be addressed with urgency. Honorable Angie Mosaka have to wake up from a deep sleep and ensure that this community get the school that they deserve. Children can't be walking still in our democracy at this time to school at that kilometers. She needs to do a job and wake up from the sleep, and they need to stop stealing our monies that children needs to get schools. I thank you.
The next speaker is the Honorable Ngobo.
Honorable Chairperson, Home Affairs has come to the party again. Singh has become Ngobo, or Ngobo has become Singh. I'm going to have my camera switched off because I'm having some network connection problems. Honorable Chairperson, the history of dispossession of land in South Africa is a painful one that resonates with many South Africans. The loss of land is a dignity-stripping ordeal that filters into the generations that follow in an indelible way. The Constitution guarantees the rights to equality and dignity for all. Because all rights in the Constitution are interlinked, the right to property is inextricably linked to the dignity of people. In the case of the Griqua people, and of course, the issue at hand, the right to education. The IFP recognizes that this contingent of people are currently fighting a myriad of battles, including mining rights and the access to basic services. Gain access to a constitutionally guaranteed right that unlocks the doors for a better future. In the poorest of our provinces. This is despite the existence of the minimum norms and standards for public school infrastructure, which have been the subject of litigation in another poor province, that is the Eastern Cape. These minimum norms and standards, Honorable Chairperson, state that the department has an obligation to provide school regardless of their size, with the support material and appropriate school space. 5 years old, commute to schools in neighboring areas, and Honorable Chairperson, The perennial financial issues at the Department of Basic Education are the He has expressed its appreciation for the fiscal obstacles faced by government in general. Once again, the deplorable state of infrastructure at schools in our poor provinces the practicality of this issue and hopes to see progress for this and other affected communities sooner rather than later. It is unfortunate that we have reduced the obligations regarding basic education to progressive realization when it is the only socio-economic right that comes without the caveat. The IFP supports the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. The next speaker is the Honorable Boshoff.
Honorable House Chair, the scientific consensus is that race is just a social construct. Now, in that regard, most things are actually social constructs, like the borders of countries, the borders of districts, the borders of municipalities, but they are treated as if they are as fundamental as gravity itself. Nou, dit sê ek, omdat die gemeenskap van Gongong 'n primêre werklikheid van die Suid-Afrikaanse gemeenskap is, soos elke ander gemeenskap. Die gemeenskappe, kulturele plaaslike gemeenskap, soos wat hulle in tyd en plek aangetref word, is die primêre werklikheid, die primêre sosiale werklikheid, waarvan sekondêre werklikhede soos grense en skole en ander afgelei moet word. Nou, Gongong is soos wat verskeie sprekers voor ons reeds gesê het, honderde jare in die omgewing besig om te woon, om hulle self besig te hou, ekonomiese aktiwiteite te beleef, uit te voer, en hulle is ook in al die tyd besig gewees om diamante daar langs die rivier te kry, wat naderhand vir mense ander waarde gekry het, as wat hulle daaraan geheg het. Dit is hoekom die grond aan die Gongong mynmaatskappy behoort het, en die een stukkie besonderheid, wat van die sprekers tot dusver konsekwent uitgelaat het, is dat die regering in 1986 hierdie grond vir die Gongong munisipaliteit gekoop het en in trust gehou het. Maar wat het sedertdien gebeur? Wat sedertdien gebeur het, is presies wat by die wet nommer 9 gebiede of die traankraangebiede reg oor Suid-Afrika plaasgevind het. En dit is dat die grond in die hand van munisipaliteite geplaas is, wat van daar af die mense, die gemeenskappe, wat al vir eeue daar woon, hanteer asof vir die huurders is wat daar woon op die genade van die munisipaliteit. Met ander woorde, die primêre sosiale werklikheid word afhanklik gestel van die sekondêre een in plek van andersom. Nou, die rol van 'n skool in 'n gemeenskap is absoluut sentraal in die skepping van identiteit, in die sosialisering van kinders, en daarom kan ons dit nie net sien as 'n instituut van opleiding en kinders kan nou hiernatoe gevat word of daarnatoe gevat word of enige plek gevat word nie. Hier het ons 'n kultureel samehangende gemeenskap, die Griquas van Gongong, wat reeds sukkel om hulle grond te bou, om hulle reg en hulle verblyfsekerheid te bou, maar om allerlei redes wat eintlik uitgedateer is, want ons het intussen met sosiale afstand en met vervoer wat 'n probleem is te doen gekry, weerhou daarvan om 'n skool te kry. En ek dink hierdie komitee, hierdie verslag behoort verwerp te word en die hele besluit moet heroorweeg word. Baie dankie.
Dankie, achtbare lid. The next speaker is the Honorable Soekers.
Thank you, Chair. The ACDP commends the leadership and respect for heritage as shown by the community of Gongong. Hierdie gemeenskap het die inisiatief geneem om hulle saak vir die dringende opheffing van die gemeenskap, die ontwikkeling en behoud van kultuur voor die portefeulje komitee te bring en om die departement van onderwys se ondersteuning te vra vir die bou van 'n primêre skool. Die gebrek aan ontwikkeling deur die staat oor 'n baie lang periode het bygedra tot die sosiale agteruitgang van hierdie gemeenskap. Dit is uiters belangrik om die punte wat deur die komiteelede gemaak is te onderstreep in hierdie aangeleentheid. Dit is nodig dat die komitee die gemeenskap besoek om erkenning te gee aan die pleidooi van die gemeenskap en sodat die Griqua mense van Gongong weet ons sien en hoor hulle. Tweedens, dat daar 'n interdepartementele intervensie plaasvind om die klagtes van intimidasie en obstruksie deur amptenare en die gebrek aan ontwikkeling aan te spreek. It is also important for us to take note of these allegations of harassment made by the community against the CPA established by the Department of Rural Development, Land Reform and Agriculture. The plight of this community cannot be ignored, and it demands a multifaceted approach to restore the dignity and pride of the community. It is also important to note that the community, through the Griqua People's Heritage and NPO, is asking for partnership in its own development, with land rights and basic services forming the basis of their representation to the Portfolio Committee. Here before us stands the challenge of preserving heritage, addressing land ownership, and strengthening communities to the betterment of the people who live in it. The Department of Basic Education has an important role to play in facilitating such an intervention, as cultural preservation and history is a critical pillar in education. What is important for us also is to highlight the difference in the number of children as reported by the department and those presented by the community. These numbers are critical in determining whether the DBE must build a primary school for the community of Gongong. The ACDP supports the undertaking of the committee to facilitate a collaborative, multifaceted, interdepartmental intervention. This community chair does not need our sympathy. They need our intervention. And thus we request that the committee honors its commitment in this regard. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sheikh Imam. Honourable Sheikh Imam is not on the platform. I'll go on then. I'll request the Honourable Hendricks to take up the next speaking slot. The Honourable
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Honourable Chair, I want to commend the Speaker for referring the matter to the Portfolio Committee after this community tried everything else, and this has resulted in that the matter is now before us. When the President answered questions in Parliament, the President agreed that there's discrimination against colours and that something must be done. And Al-Jamaa is on the verge of calling for a commission of inquiry into discrimination against colours. Africans in power should not discriminate in colours. That's the strong message we want to send in response to the decision by this Portfolio Committee, which is the most disgusting decision that can ever be made during Heritage Month. And it undermines the noble work that our President, the Minister of Culture wants to do. A vote for this report is a vote for racialism, it's a vote for discrimination, and Al-Jamaa will call for a division, and we hope that the honourable members of the ANC will show that they are not going to vote for something which their party is promoting, which is racialistic and which is discrimination. There should be a free vote for honourable members of the ANC on this particular matter. This is disgusting, Honourable House Chair. It reminds us of the call of the unity movement that there must be education before liberation. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Hendricks. The next speaker is the Honourable Malachi.
Thobela Chairperson, Lamalokwa Parlamente, Honourables, as representatives of the people, our commitment to the people of South Africa will always be measured by the impact we make to change their lives. The interest of our people should always guide every decision we make as a house. The community of Gongong are experiencing advanced socio-economic challenges as a result of underdevelopment. The skewed nature of infrastructure development in urban and rural areas continues to impact the teaching and learning in our country. The Northern Cape Province has 30% schools with asbestos materials which need to be prioritized for replacement. The rural development, like in the Northern Cape, negatively impact as they receive a low equitable share that is expected to finance the backlog of infrastructure development in the province. The dignity of our people and learners will be realized when all our people have access to basic services, opportunities to realize their potential. through education, we can empower our people. As Julius Nyarera said, he alluded, I quote, open quote, education is a way to escape poverty. It is a weapon of fighting it, close quote. As we empower our children and the youth with fighting weapon, we should ensure that access to education should be allocated in accessible areas. Communities without schools within surroundings can be prone to learners dropping out. Our country has limited financial resources to really erect infrastructure inequalities in our communities. The standard we have a list of 2,500 population for viability of our school is an important standard to ensure sustainability of our schools. The regionalization of schools is important to ensure schools meet the minimum norm of standards to provide quality education with a viable use of resources. The impact of learners traveling long distances also has a negative impact, as the learners are expected to travel early hours of the morning and return late at home. The risk of traveling have a negative impact of performance of learners. The learner transport support by the Department of Education exists to precisely respond to situations like these ones facing the Kongkong community. That does not meet the feasibility requirement to establish a school. A population of 2,500 is required to establish a school in a community. The scholar transport plays a key mitigating role to the lack of schools in Kongkong. The safety of all learners is important to ensure that learners are not bullied. Learners can end up dropping out of schools because of no equipped learning safety. The Portfolio Committee on Basic Education have considered the submission of the core population heritage and resolved to intervene in response to the challenges raised by the community to improve the living conditions. The construction of the early childhood development classrooms at GC Priestley Children in Grade R, they will be traveling 4.6 kilometers away from the communities. Due to the community having multiple challenges of basic infrastructure, land issues, the Portfolio Committee has correctly resolved to facilitate a collaborative effort for Kongkong community to speedily address the challenges that are outlined in their submissions. And as the African National Congress, because we believe in nation building, what African National Congress, that when we took power as early as 1994, we resolved that we're not going to leave everyone because of the parliament of the people. We resolved that we'll engage all racial groups, even those that benefited from the injustice of the past. We've agreed that we're going to work with them to build the country for all. And I'll request those on the left that they must engage their constituency, those that on the left must engage their constituency, who are the biggest beneficiaries of apartheid, who continuously don't want to assist us in building this nation, that if they don't work hard to work with us in this nation building, there will be no choice but our people will revolt against them, and the African National Congress will have nothing to say but allow that thing to happen. Now, this nation building is not a nation building of only the ANC, but I will understand our brothers in red. They will not understand the nation building because they are pickpocketers that hijack the train moving. But those that want to build this must join hands with us to make sure that we provide schools in every areas and everyone is resolved and the inequalities of this country are all resolved. In conclusion, this conclusion by the Portfolio Committee in line with the commitment of the African National Congress to respond to challenges of our people. The community of Kongkong require a multiple intervention with various departments to ensure that the provision of basic services and communities are met. The ANC adopts this report and urges the provincial government of Northern Cape to expand the provision of basic education and service to our people and freedom for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, the motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Honourable, I would like to call for a division, Honourable Chair. You want to see what the ratios are?
Al-Jamai is calling for a division. I must first ascertain if you do have the support of another political party with sufficient numbers. At the moment, the rules state that you must have at least 4 members to support a motion for a division. May I ask if there are any other political party who are supporting the call for a division? Are there any other political party who's supporting the call for a division? If there are none, then unfortunately, the call for a division can be sustained. I now order, honorable members. Honorable Mtweri, are you supporting the call for a division?
No, it's not.
You're not
alone, no.
Okay, then switch off your microphone, please. Are there any objections to the report?
Chair, the Honorable Sangweni for the EFF.
The objection is noted.
Al-Jama objects, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Hendricks must ask the ANC next time.
No, honorable member, you have raised your objection. You don't have the liberty to address the other member now. Honorable Mulder?
Sorry, Chair.
I request that the objection of the Freedom Front Plus be noted. Thank you.
Objection will be noted. Are there any further objections? With those objections, then the report is agreed to.
Honorable Chair, a point of order.
Yes, honorable member, what is the point of
Honorable
order?
Chair, you have noted the objections, and certainly if you count the objections, it is more than 4. I feel, Honorable Chair, that you must revisit this matter and that the merits for a division are there. It is ridiculous to say that there's only one person supporting a vote, whereas so many, 3 parties at least have raised the objections. I would like to have a ruling on the matter, Honorable Chair.
My ruling is, Honorable Hendricks, that is a matter that you must take to the Rules Committee. I'm implementing the rules as it currently stand. It doesn't mean if a party object, that party is necessarily supporting the call for a division. And the rule currently says that you need to have at least 4 members to support a call for a division. Take your concern to the National Assembly Rules Committee. With those objections then, the report has been agreed to, and I'll proceed now to the 6th order and will request the Secretary to read the order.
Consideration of report of Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament on Parliament of Republic of South Africa's 2018-19 annual report.
I now call upon the Honorable Mabe on the virtual platform to introduce the report. The Honorable Mabe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. It is an honor for me to present this 2019 first quarter report at the end of the Women's Month. I wish to take this opportunity to salute women who paved the way for us to be where we are today. We are still faced with a lot of challenges as women. For an example, poverty, killing of women, and equal access to opportunities. It is not yet uhuru for us as women. We therefore need to take a baton from those heroines and run this race of ensuring the total emancipation of all women. Honorable Chairperson, you will recall that the 5th Parliament was dissolved on the 31st of March 2019, and that the transition to the establishment of the 6th Parliament took place from April to June. This has resulted in less activities performed by the Parliament during this period. Therefore, the first quarter performance report covers such quiet periods, and as such, it contained no serious concern on issues other than the fact that Parliament have overspent its first quarter budget by 3%. This record overall overspending was due to the over expenditure recorded under direct charges, which is compensation of members. The direct charges overspent its budget by 42%. The reason for such significant overspending was due to the payment of loss of office and exit gratuities to non-returning members after May 2019 general elections. In this regard, Parliament has engaged National Treasury, and the matter was addressed during the 2019 budget adjustment. Honorable Chairperson, Parliament is faced with resource constraint to execute its constitutional mandate, and this challenge is persisting. It is then on those grounds that the ANC has agreed to invoke its resolution of the 54th National Conference to deal with this challenge. The resolution which calls to conduct an assessment to establish whether the legislative sector is appropriately configured, adequately resourced, and optimally functioning. Honorable Chair, in conclusion, I want to refer to paragraph 6.5 of our report, in which we call on the institution to fill its critical vacancies as a matter of agency. It is now 9 months since the publication of our report, and there has been little or no progress in filling of vacancies that are integral to the functioning of the institution. We're referring specifically to the post of the Secretary to Parliament, the Director of the PBO, the Chief Financial Officer and Advisor in the Treasury Advice Office. The adoption of our report also recommends that the Chief Audit Executive post, it is vacant and therefore it has to be filled as a matter of agency. It goes without saying that the long period for which this post have been vacant is unacceptable and detrimental to the functioning of the institution. We therefore move that the report be approved. Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Point of order, please, from the House.
Yes, what's the point of order, Honorable Swart?
Can I just have clarity on the item that we're dealing with? Because it appears that the previous speaker just referred to the next item, which is the report on the first quarter report, 2019-20. The earlier item is the annual report. Are we doing the two items together? Can I just have that clarity? Thank you.
No, we are not doing the items together, Honorable Member. The item is read as the sixth order, refers to the report of the Joint Standing Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament of the Republic of South Africa 2018-19 annual report. Honorable Mabe, that is the report that you've been speaking to? Honorable Mabe?
I spoke to the first quarter, Honorable Chairperson.
Is that the report you have been speaking to?
I spoke to the first quarter report, Honorable Chair.
Chair, may I assist that Swart again? That is item 7. That's the next item, Chair. But I presume maybe we're doing them together. That is the next item, item 7 on the order paper, the first quarter report. This is the earlier item is the annual report for the whole year.
Thank you, Honorable Swart. You are correct. You are correct.
Honorable Chairperson.
In terms of order, in terms of the order paper that's in front of us, the sixth order refers to the 2018-19 annual report, and the seventh order will refer to the first quarter report. Honorable Mabe.
My apologies, Honorable Chairperson. My speaking notes.
Yes,
Honorable Chair.
Mabe. Please continue.
No, I'm saying that in terms of my agenda, the first report that was to be tabled, it was the quarterly report. My apologies if I have made a mistake on that issue.
Honorable Mabe, you still have about 3 minutes left. So I think you have now an opportunity to speak to the correct report, which will be the 2019 annual report.
Honorable Chairperson.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's not possible for us to deal with what she's reported, because I think it'll be the same speakers and then we do the next order after that. So we save some time. Is that possible? Now that we've received the report.
Yes, if there's agreement amongst all parties that we swap the orders around, then we don't have any problems with that. Are there any objection to that, Honorable Chief Whips? There's no objection. There's no objection. I will thus read the order as follows. We're dealing with the seventh order, and I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party on the seventh order.
House Chair, thank you very much. I move that this report be adopted by the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip.
Order.
There's a request for declarations, and I will request the Honorable Julius to address us from the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will switch off my video due to connectivity, if that's in order. Chairperson, this is yet another late report, and unfortunately, the chairperson of the committee, the co-chairperson, has it quite a bit wrong. It can be confusing because these reports are very late. The majority of the recommendations included in this report have already been dealt with by the committee. And I repeat, these late reports hampers Parliament to effectively hold the executive of this Parliament accountable. Nevertheless, Chairperson, in the 5th Parliament, this institution identified 6 values to conduct business, and that is openness, responsiveness, accountability, teamwork, professionalism, and integrity. Are we living up to these values when our performance indicators are misguided? There was a recommendation that all performance plans of the 6 contain quarterly performance targets. As it is, these targets are not always measuring performance in this institution. For example, over 80% of employees cannot be properly measured on their performance. How will we ensure that they do what they are supposed to do if we cannot measure their performance? Furthermore, most of the targets are annual targets that cannot be properly measured on a quarterly basis as we have in this report. In these targets, if these targets are set as annual targets, it can only be measured on an annual basis. How will the committee or the executive be alerted to early warnings of non-compliance? We do not have to sit with challenges at the end, whilst we could do something earlier to avoid these challenges. We must strive to break up these hard annual targets because it is possible. Chair, any professional institution would have targets that are smart, and these are firstly specific. Parliament has one of its tasks to reduce unemployment, poverty, and inequality. How will this be measured from these targets? How will we hold the executive accountable for these unattainable targets? The A in SMART. Parliament is an institution, cannot hold the Speaker accountable for these targets, unemployment, poverty, and inequality. It doesn't make sense. It's not measurable. How can we measure these targets when we cannot even properly measure the performance of our employees? Chairperson, if these targets are misguided, it can never be relevant. It is certainly not time-based even, if you cannot measure it on a quarterly basis as we see in this report. As a smart party, the DA would urge that this institution gets smart targets. Until that happens, I'm afraid this institution will never be able to do what South Africans expect from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Mawatwe from the EFF.
Thank you very much, House Chair. As the EFF, we have raised our concerns about how the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament engage and process issues. Before we can fully engage, Chair, with the administration of Parliament as a whole, we must first have an orderly committee. Yesterday in the committee, we adopted minutes of the meetings from July 2019 up to the end of July 2020 in one meeting. Minutes of the previous meetings must be adopted in the next meeting when we can all still clearly remember what was discussed in the previous meeting, not a year later. Otherwise, how do we deal with matters arising, track progress, and professionalize the committee work when we do not adopt the minutes of the previous meeting? Chair, on a more substantive matter, it is concerning that as Parliament, we are being dragged into the misguided ongoing austerity politics of the ruling party, and we have not been able to demonstrate our independence as a legislative arm of the state. We're behaving as if we report to the president, and we do not. The recent budget cut of around 3% on all expenditure items are not guided by any scientific expenditure review. Instead, we receive instruction from the National Treasury, like we are some Schedule 3 public entity listed at the back of the PFMA and not Parliament. IT and communications budgets were cut by approximately 3% at a time when, as members of Parliament, we are using more data and we are holding meetings through the visual platform, but the budget was cut. Why not cut travel by 20%? Because members of parliament were not traveling to parliament during lockdown. There's no common sense guiding austerities. The other issue, House Chair, which we still need to deal with urgently, is the wasteful and unnecessary expenditure on renovations of parliament villages. When we met with the Speaker of Parliament, the chief whips, we all agreed that instead of spending billions through corrupt and inflated contracts, we have agreed that members of parliament should get a market-related allowance instead of providing official housing residence. It is more cost efficient and eliminates unnecessary administration, maintenance, and refurbishment costs, and this will lead to substantial savings in the long term. But nothing concrete has been done in the first quarter. Instead, we see tenders being awarded for renovations and members receiving letters to move out of their allocated houses speedily. We are still not getting details on what goods and services are Parliament paying for and who are the suppliers. Such details should form the basis of committee work, but we have been asking for this information since the 5th Parliament and we still do not have it. Why is so difficult about a list of suppliers, goods and services they supplied, how much we pay them, and how they were appointed? As things stand, House Chair, the work of the Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament leaves so much to be desired, and as members of Parliament, we cannot rely on these reports to hold the executive accountable. We therefore reject this report. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Singh.
At last, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. It is me. I just want to agree with my previous honourable colleagues that the timing of the tabling of this report is very crucial, because this is a report that's more than a year old, and we find that convening joint standing committees are quite problematic when members of two houses have to get together and we have quorum and other problems. But having said that, Honourable Chairperson, the IFP appreciates that the period under review largely involved the transition from the 5th to the 6th administration, thereby limiting the execution of the business of Parliament. It is unfortunate that much time was spent addressing issues that arose in or as a result of the previous administration. It is worrying that despite the fact that Parliament has been in operation for over 2 decades, there is not more urgency and efficiency in how time is spent during a transition. The IFP notes that the first quarter over expenditure of 55.8 million rand related to compensation for loss of office and exit gratuities for the 171 members, which was a record, I think, who did not return to the 6th administration. The transition from one parliament to another involves changes of this nature. The over-expenditure suggests a lack of preparation for the financial implications that accrue. A special fund, Honourable Chairperson, needs to be developed and accounted for in the Appropriation Act to prevent the almost inevitably hefty sum for such payments. One of Parliament's missions is strengthening legislative capacity. This is fundamental to Parliament's role in our democracy. The 5th administration rose for the last time with 39 bills unfinished, 20 of which were awaiting presidential assent. We're all aware of the sudden uptick in passing of law towards the end of the previous administration's final term. But South Africa deserves this. It is imperative that whatever capacity and political issues that preclude expediency when legislating are effectively addressed. Critical bills from the previous administration were only passed this year, including the National Minimum Wage Bill and the IPID Amendment Bill. The Traditional Courts Bill and the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill have yet to make it to the President's desk. The pandemic bill, Honourable Chairperson, has both exposed Parliament's technological infrastructure and capacity and shown members and staff that it is indeed possible to effectively execute the mandate of this Parliament remotely. The IFP has previously suggested that certain committee meetings be conducted remotely to cut travel costs and fall in line with the necessary austerity measures currently being implemented. I was pleased with the report by the political oversight and accountability report by Advocate Beg this morning, Honourable Chairperson. I think you'll be pleased to know that 3 political parties received this report. And I think it's important that we look at this so that we can have a comprehensive model in how we deal with what it Parliament's role has been. This House is a profoundly political one. However, we believe our primary obligation is the service of the people of South Africa. We have a duty to execute our constitutional mandates without allowing our affiliations to be an obstacle, which they are most of the time. The IFP supports this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. The next speaker is the Honorable Swart.
Without allowing our affiliations to be an obstacle, which they are.
Thank you, House Chair. And now with the reverse on the items, it's just interesting that there were actually 3 reports on the ATCs, and it's a question as to why the 3rd report wasn't also done today. And we from the ACDP's side also understand and are concerned about the fact that it has taken so long to bring these reports to the House, given that they were ATC'd on the 4th of December last year. So a lot of the issues have already been covered, as previous speakers have indicated. But from our perspective, I would like to again emphasize and give thanks to all the administrative staff that assisted with the smooth transition from the 5th to the 6th Parliament. We appreciate that as a result of that transition and the elections, that a number of programs and targets could not be met for the period under review. And possibly these key deliverables should be adjusted for an election year, given the fact that there is Parliament sittings are more limited in this regard. And of course, other deliverables as to a smooth transition between parliaments could be added when it comes to an election year. But as previous speakers have indicated, the period under review, the spending on compensation of members stood at 187.687 million, 42% more than projected. And that is, and there's an indication that by the end of the financial year, the institutional parliament would have exceeded the projected annual budget by 21%. And that is, of course, due to the payment of loss of office and exit gratuities to the 171 parliamentarians that did not return to office after last year's election. And that should also be a matter of concern to us as members of parliament, given the fact that one would like to see continuity and as many MPs with institutional knowledge coming back. This is a large number of parliamentarians that did not return to parliament for whatever reason. But again, from our perspective, it is important, and whilst it is people's and parties' perspectives, but it is something that one does need to look at. The committee made certain recommendations about annual performances that should contain quarterly performance targets, and that there should be a breakdown of the appropriation statement for economic classification, that this should be in greater detail. It also recommended that annual and quarterly expenditure information should be broken down and presented in a manner that made for easier oversight by this body. And it also recommended that various allegations about discrepancies in how employees are compensated should be addressed before the 6th Parliament strategic plan is finalized. And these are issues that obviously this committee needs to deal with. But from the ACDP's perspective, it is important to understand the difficulty of a joint committee meeting where 2 houses are required to meet at this committee. So we support this report, understanding.
Thank you, Honorable Swart. Honorable members, I now will hand over to the Honorable Deputy Speaker as I recognize the last speaker on this item, the Honorable Marshall from the ANC. The Honorable Marshall.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, Honorable Members of Parliament and all protocol observed. Honorable Chairperson, the ANC stands to support this report. But also we have to mention that we have a responsibility as political parties to exercise diligent oversight over the Parliament on a quarterly basis in order to make a determination as to whether Parliament is actually performed against its policy framework, strategic plans and annual performance plan. Honorable Chairperson, I have to mention this, that the members of this committee, they really do not attend the meeting committees. They will always not form a quorum. Maybe that is why this report is one of the reports that they came late, because we have so many meetings that they are not forming a quorum. So we are suggesting to the House that both House, NCOP and NA, the members of this committee must attend the meeting so that we can be able to deal with matters in time. In addition, we have to determine using measurable indicators whether Parliament is responding practically in giving support to the public representatives and their political parties. Response to the national demands and seen remains to relevant in the lives of our people, and contribute in providing the lives of our people, and acting as a platform or gallery of the people as Parliament. Honorable Chairperson of the House, it should also be noted that in the first quarter, immediately after the 2019 Parliament performance against the actual performance, Parliament against annual performance plan, APP, and the strategic plan of the previous year of 2018-2019, the fifth year's Parliament policy framework were as follows: strengthening and oversight and capability, enhancing public involvement, deepening engagement in international forums, strengthening cooperative governance, and strengthening legislative capacity. Honorable Chairperson, we measure declaration support on this report of the performance of Parliament in the first quarter of the 2019-2020, based on the ANC's own analysis of whether the predetermined strategic outcome indicators of the Parliament, which is uses to measure its performance, have a fact being met. We just wanted to check as to whether we have met those. These measures against the application of legislation, the constitutional mandate, Honorable Chair, and as the ANC on policies perspective on what the legislation arm of the state should be responding to. Honorable Chairperson, ANC 53rd National Conference resolution emphasized the importance of building an activist parliament committed to the idea of a developmental state. And this idea find expressions in the Parliament strategic focuses area in relation to the oversight work, accountability, and enhanced public involvement. Most importantly, Chairperson, the idea of the activist and accountable Parliament is broad on the idea of the Freedom Charter, when a Congress of the People declared that people shall govern. We need to involve them. Honorable Chairperson, ANC would like to see sound financial management of Parliament, and this should be linked to the effectiveness of the Parliament administration, guided by the values of openness, responsiveness, accountability, teamwork, professional, and integrity. Honorable Chairperson, we continue to argue against the measuring performance in which Parliament sets targets. And if targets is met, then the indicator is performance has been achieved. And to this percentage is given based on the number of targets met. On a point of order, Chair.
On a point of order, Chair.
What's the point of order?
Thanks,
What's the point of order, Honourable Member?
No, I just wanted to check. Yes, Deputy Speaker, allow me to speak. I would just want to check, Deputy Speaker, is the member that is speaking now not NCOP member? That's what I'm
Honourable Member?
For you.
No. That you shouldn't ask us. You go and do your research and then come back to Parliament. You can't ask in the course of the meeting here things that you shouldn't be asking. Honourable Marco,
like
please
this?
conclude your remarks.
Honourable Chairperson,
No, because
on the program of strategic leadership and governance, the percentage given is 77%, when 2 of those 3 performance targets were not met. Further than indicators which were said, targets 1 analysis reports per quarter as performance of the office of the institution supporting democracy is far too low. For a quarter, Honorable Chairperson, Parliament needs to look into setting a far higher outcome standards per quarter. Honorable Chairperson, on core business of Parliament, performance is set at 82%, despite the public participation processes were not measured. Honorable Chairperson, on financial performance program, there is poor measurement of quality of expenditure and the inability to successfully deal with the challenges of irregular and fruitless expenditure and wasteful expenditure. It is not doing us well, Honorable Chairperson. Since the 1990s, the National Treasury and members of this Parliament have raised a concern in their oversight work on the quality of the expenditure and further recommended that there must be measures for them to operate. For the ANC, evaluating the performance of the Parliament in the first quarter of 2019-2020, it tells us that the building a capable and productive parliamentary services that delivers the enhancement support of the public representative to accomplish the effectiveness their constitutional function is primary and is fundamental. Honorable Chairperson,
you probably mean Deputy Speaker, right? Honorable Frolik has gone. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. It is for this reason that we express our serious concern about the inability of Parliament to meet the targets of developmental program for members. As this is extremely important and is ensuring that the successful performance of the members' functions. Honorable Deputy Speaker, despite our criticisms, we require attention going forward. The ANC supports this report, Honorable Speaker, with the conclusion which says that we would like to inform South Africans that the ANC-led government continues to fight for a better life for them. That we are still very, very much happy with the collective leadership led by the executive in remembering that our manifestos were committed to ourselves. We committed ourselves that we are going to build a more effective parliament that will take care of our own people like we are doing now.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, just be alert around your environment as it changes. You know, things are always in a state of flux. They are ever changing. Just watch your screen and see who's there in front of you. Honorable Members, the motion is that the report be adopted. Any objection?
Deputy Speaker, the objection of the DA.
Yes, I'll note the objection of the DA.
Deputy Speaker, can you note the objection of the EFF?
I will do that, ma'am. I will note the objection of the EFF. Any other objection I should note? Thank you. We proceed. The report is agreed to. As I understand earlier on, I must now do a somersault and go back to the 6th order. And will the Secretary read it so that we start afresh?
Consideration of report of Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament. 2018-19 annual report.
Thank you, madam. Thanks. You can shoot it back.
Thank you. I now call Honorable Mabi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The committee welcomes the unqualified outcome with no material findings, which Parliament has sustained for the past 5 years. The committee further notes concerns raised by the Auditor General with regard to Parliament's reporting on performance information. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the performance of Parliament has steadily increased over the years. It increases from 45.87% in 2015-2016 to 78.57 in 2018-2019 financial year. This increased performance was achieved despite the decline of the operational budget of Parliament over the same period. Such good performance can be ascribed to a number of factors that includes, amongst others, improvement in governance of Parliament, process improvements in the delivery of products and services provided by the parliamentary administration, and the methods used to measure administrative activities and outputs. However, the committee has noted with concern that Parliament has yet again failed to measure some of its performance targets under Programme 3 and all the performance targets under Programme 4 on a quarterly basis. The inability of Parliament to measure some of its performance indicators and targets on a quarterly basis makes it impossible to track an ongoing performance progress in respect of the implementation of the APPs. And therefore, the strategic plan of Parliament is also affected. Reporting on the performance indicators and targets on a quarterly basis provides progress on the implementation of the institution's plan with particular reference to monitoring service delivery against specific quarterly targets. Furthermore, quarterly performance reporting serves as an important management tool for accounting officers and the executive authority, and is an oversight instrument used by the committee and the other oversight bodies. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the committee has further noted with concern the failure of the executive authority to comply with Financial Management of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act on various issues. However, the committee is pleased that the institution has not incurred any fruitless and wasteful or irregular expenditure in the period under review. The committee is concerned that 298,000 in fruitless and wasteful expenditure and 366,000 in irregular expenditure taken back to previous years were not being condoned or recovered. It is therefore on those grounds that the committee has strongly recommended that Treasury Advice Office, which was created for advising the executive authority concerning the implementation of the FAMPLA, should be established as a matter of agency. In concluding, Honorable Deputy Speaker, it is imperative for the committee to ensure that Parliament has a best-run administration whereby efficient, effective, and economic are the center of a decision-making. Financial resources allocated to Parliament are prudently managed, and the day-to-day operations of the Parliament conducted according to the required rules and prescripts. The rationale behind that a well-run Parliament will be its effectiveness and appropriateness in ensuring that Parliament is able to oversee the executive action in order to achieve the broad objectives of the National Development Plan. Deputy Speaker, I want to thank members for the understanding and for the support. We therefore move that the report be agreed to. I thank you.
Chief Whip. Chief Whip.
Ndadelichis.
Tuma Mesi.
Divela Ndadelichis.
Sikankupa rugumele me wansibanna. Kisama kantubotsila.
Very much. What is this now? Deputy Speaker, I move that this House adopt the report.
Okay. Honorable members, there being requests for declarations, we'll now call on Honorable Julius to start. Honorable Julius.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I will mute my the video. I will stop my video because connectivity. Thank you.
I understand, yeah. We understand. Yeah. It improves your bandwidth. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Deputy Speaker, nog 'n verslag vandag uit Noag se argief. Van verlede jaar Desember af sit ons weer eens hier met hierdie verslag hierso voor ons. Dit is onaanvaarbaar. Dan moet meer ernstig gedink word aan hierdie komitee en verslag moet op tyd gestuur word na hierdie komitee. Deputy Speaker, this is a very serious committee. It is mandated by the Financial Management of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act that seeks to ensure transparency, accountability, and sound management of revenue, expenditure, assets, and liabilities of Parliament. As you know, we must hold you and the Speaker accountable. Reports are not dealt with expeditiously. We might end up not doing justice to this constitutional imperative. Another challenge brought by this very late finalization of this report is that most of the issues would be dealt with the authorities, and they may have used the time to iron out challenge that they found in this report and then send it to this House, or the committee may have dealt with these issues during other engagements. Deputy Speaker, the amounts that was owed to different service providers at the end of this financial year remained a challenge from previous years. Over 3 million was owed to the Department of Justice, Department of Public Works, and the South African Police Service. The state adopted a 30-day permanent payment policy, and it is obvious that Parliament should also adhere to these practices. Deputy Speaker, we must hold you accountable, and you must give us the space to hold you accountable. The missed targets in programs 4 and 5 in respect of client satisfaction and the number of days it took to reimburse members was a challenge highlighted in this report. I can, however, attest to the fact that these issues have significantly improved, and I would like to thank the dedication of the relevant officials of Parliament for their hard work under difficult circumstances in this regard. Things have improved for the better. Deputy Speaker, Parliament is still responsible for contribution payments of medical aids of former members of Parliament and former members of provincial legislations. This is not sustainable because it takes money away from other important functions of Parliament. The proposal is that provincial legislations must be invited for discussions on this so that a lasting solution can be found and see how we can make Parliament more manageable and affordable for members of Parliament. Deputy Speaker, the Treasury Advice Office was supposed to be established this year, and you are well aware of it. This was not done. We are far from this. You would agree that this can be an effective way of helping you, the executive officials and the committee, to better understand Parliament finances and for us to do better oversight. This is something that we really need to give attention to in this 6th Parliament. The lack of performance information is a serious concern. How do you say that Parliament did well or not, as the committee chairperson just said? The Auditor General clearly said that they could not find performance information. Now, if you don't have performance information, how do you know that people performed well? How do we do our oversight role as members of this committee? It is really crippling to us, and I would advise that we really do something about this. The performance indicators are not clear. The performance indicators, as I said earlier, are not specific. Chairperson, the DA cannot at this moment support this report. It might be in future because we have done really well with the 2 chairpersons. They've done well working. We worked well to iron out most of these. I also recognize the efforts of yourself and the speaker to address some of these issues when you visited our committee. I think more can be done. At this stage, we cannot support this report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Julius. Honorable Mautwe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the report tabled before the House of Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament 2018-2019 annual report is a report that as members of Parliament we need to start taking serious and not just adopt willy-nilly like it has been the case in the past. We must take this report serious, hence, because as the EFF we bring concrete proposals and it is evident in the 2018-2019 annual report that we are not being taken serious. For the whole of 2018-2019, Deputy Speaker, Parliament has entrusted its management to an acting secretary. In fact, the current acting secretary has been acting since June 2017, and we still do not have a permanent secretary to date. People in acting positions, especially acting for that long, should not be entrusted with long-term strategic decisions. When are we getting a permanent secretary of Parliament? It is for that reason we still do not have a clear strategic plan, do not have a proper mechanism to ensure that resolutions of this House are implemented to their final stage. Parliament claims to curb gender-based violence, but we still do not have a committee that focuses specifically on GBV. This is despite the horrifying killings of women and children on a daily basis. Despite our call as the EFF in the period covered in the report, we have failed as Parliament to put measures in place to ensure that our people have direct access to their Parliament to report corruption. COVID-19 has exposed precisely this point. When we proposed an ad hoc committee to look into COVID-19 related corruption as the EFF, we were told other committees are dealing with it. Today, we sit here with a report from Auditor General with glaring evidence of corruption, and Parliament is the only arm of state that has done nothing. This is even after the Constitutional Court said Parliament failed to act on time on the state capture issue. All we have done is listening to unveilings of corruption, irregular expenditure, and all the malfeasance the world has correctly labeled as crime against humanity and as murder. We are still failing to make Parliament accessible to ordinary South Africans, and part of the problem is the location of this very Parliament. There's absolutely no reason, none whatsoever, why we must seek to maintain a colonial and apartheid agreement between the Afrikaner and the British on agreements that did not concern us as Black people. When they decided to say Parliament must be in Cape Town and the capital city should be Pretoria, we were not consulted as Black people. We sit here today, 26 years after democracy of the Black-led government, and we still honor such agreements. As the EFF, we maintain our position that Parliament must move to Tshwane. In Tshwane, people from Northwest, KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, Free State, and Northern Cape can move to Parliament, make their submission, and go home the same day. You cannot do this with the current situation of Parliament being in Cape Town. The current arrangement is too elitist and excludes many of our people from participating in Parliament. In doing this, Deputy Speaker, we'll also do away with those Parliament villages that cost taxpayers exorbitant funds when we can adopt a different approach. Members of Parliament are adults. Give them a market-related rental allowance and do away with official housing that you are forced to maintain and refurbish through public works exorbitant contracts. Lastly, Deputy Speaker, Parliament show its program on DSTV channel 408, but not on SABC. It means for many of our people who have TV but without DSTV, they cannot watch what we do here in Parliament. We propose that there should be a dedicated space so that our people can see and know what we are doing here as members of Parliament. We must do more to make Parliament accessible to the people who vote for us and not lose focus by going back to the Zuma years of using Parliament to defend the ruling party. We therefore, as the EFF, reject this report. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker and honorable members. Let me start off by saying the IFP will support this report. But having said that, Deputy Speaker, never before in our democracy will the role of Parliament be as important as now. This global pandemic provides ample opportunities for cadres to loot state coffers at the expense of those most vulnerable in society. We have a constitutional duty, honorable members, to remind ourselves of the critical role we have to play in providing oversight over the executive to ensure we represent the people under the Constitution. Before turning to the report of the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Matters of Parliament, we need to take a hard look in the mirror, honorable members. We need to ask ourselves if we are truly representing the people of South Africa and their aims and objectives and ambitions. Our country is in turmoil, on the brink of financial collapse. South Africans are assaulted almost daily by reports of corruption, the looting of COVID-19 relief funds, and horrifying reports of GBV. We as Parliament cannot be sidelined during this pandemic. We cannot be sidelined as government departments mismanage relief funds. We need to ask the hard questions, honorable members. We need to enforce oversight. Above all, we need to rebuild confidence in Parliament. There is a 2019 South African Reconciliation Barometer survey that was conducted by the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, and it showed that since 2006, there has been a significant decline in confidence in Parliament from 29.6% to 14.6%. This, honorable members, is unacceptable. Let us reclaim our role. Let us reclaim the public's confidence and ensure that the executive does not sidestep us. Here, that Parliament received an unqualified audit report and had no cases of fruitless and wasteful expenditure during the 2018-19 financial year. However, we are highly concerned about the slow pace of investigations into previous years' irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and the failure of Parliament to act on material irregularities. This, honourable members, is unacceptable. Considering Parliament's constitutional imperative, Parliament cannot be perceived to be slow in instituting disciplinary and criminal steps following unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. How can we reclaim confidence in our institution if we do not enforce accountability ourselves? Talk is cheap, honorable members. We need to lead by example. Only by doing so can we truly say we represent the will of the people and we are upholding the vision of our Constitution. As the IFP, we fully support the committee's recommendation for the delay in investigations into previous years' irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. This is a matter of extreme urgency. We cannot simply talk about accountability. We need to enforce accountability among our members. This is a necessary step on the path to regaining confidence in the eyes of the public that we are duty-bound to serve. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, honourable members, the IFP will closely monitor the progress of these investigations as we believe the people of South Africa deserve more. They deserve a Parliament that truly provides oversight over the executive, a Parliament that asks the tough questions and is not afraid to reprimand its own for abusing valuable resources. And as I said, we will support the report.
Thank you, Honourable Singh. Honourable Swart.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the ACDP again appreciates these reports are somewhat dated, but it is again important to thank and acknowledge the Executive Authority and all the administrative staff at Parliament for their commitment, particularly during these challenging times of COVID-19 lockdown. And who would have thought last year in December when these reports were ATC'd that how the country would change, and with a total lockdown and how the institution, Parliament, would shift to online platforms. Now, as far as the report is concerned, the ACDP commends Parliament on receiving an unqualified audit report with no material findings on performance information and compliance with laws and regulations. And at the end of the period under review, Parliament had spent 2.43 billion with a degree of underspending. However, Parliament did record a deficit for the 2018-19 financial year. This deficit would normally raise concerns about the going concern assumption for Parliament, with your liabilities exceeding your assets. However, it is attributed again to the post-retirement employee benefit obligations. And I think what is important to note, if anyone has an issue with the going concern, is that it is the entire post-retirement benefit and exit gratuity is funded on an annual basis by National Treasury via a direct charge, and thus there is no risk raised in respect of the going concern assumption for Parliament from a financing perspective. Deputy Speaker, so let's come to the present. And during this COVID-19 lockdown period, probably the unsung heroes are undoubtedly the ICT section, who have managed the bodes well for the future, definitely, and could result in substantial cost savings. And however, that having been said, we also from the ACDP side share the view that Parliament should start returning to normal, Chief Whip. And I appreciate your views in this regard, and seeing various ministers here and more MPs come into Parliament, obviously with due health protocols in place, not obliging anyone to be here. But one of the concerns, obviously, during the initial stages of lockdown was the degree that Parliament could exercise oversight. And this, we tried as much as we could, but clearly it was deficient when you see the COVID-19 corruption that took place. And possibly this was foreseeable. And when one looks at what the Auditor General said yesterday, he said his report requires a heightened level of oversight would be required as more COVID-19 programs are rolled out. This we need to take seriously from our side. As Parliament, we need to improve our oversight in terms of the oversight and accountability model. The ACDP will support this report. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Honorable Sheikh Imam is not on the platform, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
All right, thank you. Let's go to then Honorable Kaiso.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Let me recognize the Chief Whip. We are today immediately considering Parliament's annual report for the financial year 2018-19. The ANC, in considering an annual report, has a high expectation that we'll be engaging on a report that obviously reflects output, but critically should reflect an assessment of impact against the programs and their performance indicators. We are not measuring impact by using an annual report. Then we are not exercising oversight over Parliament to make a determination as to whether Parliament is actually performing against its policy framework, strategic plan, and annual performance plan. In addition, the annual report should tell us whether the measurable indicators are responding practically to support for public representatives and their parties. The ANC's declaration of support for the annual report is measured against the ANC's own analysis of whether the predetermined strategic outcome indicators of Parliament, which it uses to measure its performance, have in fact been met. We have also used, I must state outrightly here that, Honorable Deputy Speaker, that during the period of transition, we have tried to work very hard to align the work such that despite any challenges, at least there's a level of improvement that has taken place during that period under review. We have also used the 2019 mid-year budget and performance assessment report of Parliament when assessing the annual report of 2018-19 of Parliament. This mid-year assessment produced certain findings which have material impact when assessing the annual report. The mid-year report highlighted some concerns which at the time was put to the management of Parliament. This emanating from both non-financial performance and financial performance. Some of the concerns raised required deliberations of the committee which took place. We know that the annual report reflects an improvement in the performance over previous years, achieved despite the fact that Parliament's operational budget declined over the same period. This increase is ascribed to a number of factors, including improvement in the governance of Parliament, process improvements in delivery of products and services, and methods used to measure administrative activities and outputs. Whilst Parliament achieved 11 out of its 14 key performance targets, our concern will remain on how we measure performance, and that is, this cannot be reduced to whether you met a target or not. The quality of performance must be measured. In the year under review, Parliament achieved as collective with other legislatures that the legislative sector bill was endorsed by the Speakers Forum and referred to Parliament during 2018-19 financial year for introduction into the formal legislative process as a Section 76 bill. Further to the legislative sector developed, the legislature oversights strategies and the NDP tracking template, which integrates provincial development plans, local government integrated development plans. These are important achievements that I've talked about. One of the matters that requires our attention is the decrease in cash and cash equivalent versus increase in deficit generated by the Parliament. We cannot, we note the Parliament recorded a deficit of its financial performance for the 2018-19 financial years. Such deficit was accompanied by the reduction in cash and cash equivalent, that is Parliament reserves. As we know, that the fact that reserve depleted in the year under review has implications, as some critical functions are funded through these retained reserve or retained funds. For the year under review, the Parliament Budget Office and Office of Institution of Supporting Democracy were funded from these reserves. Therefore, if these reserves keep on depleting due to the fact that they fund a deficit, this poses a financial threat to Parliament. Clearly, we're concerned, we raised that at the time and continue to do so, the plans to change this management must be completed. We must move away from programs and functions which are currently financed by cash reserve. Our collective concern must be the net deficit of 1,468 billion for the financial year 2018-19. This is due to 1.2 billion provision made to the post-retirement medical aid benefits for current and former members of the Parliament. In conclusion, the matter which arises in the year under review continues to be a major concern of the ANC's transfer payments to political parties. Parliament indicated that they projected an overspending of 15 billion rand for transfer to political parties. The committee raised concern with regard to such proposal allocating additional funding to political parties and suggested that those funds be shifted to fund and other political programs of the Parliament. In fact, the committee did not support such proposal at the time. The annual report shows that the Parliament has indeed allocated an additional 17 million rand to fund transfers to political parties. The matter of transfers to political parties and the internal parliamentary criteria of 2005 that is used to determine such payment requires a serious review. 15 years on cannot mean we have not had a review of the internal criteria. Honorable Deputy Speaker, notwithstanding this, the ANC supports the annual report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, the motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Deputy Speaker, please.
Yes, Honorable Mazzoni. Honorable Mazzoni, Honorable Ntangweni of the EFF, yeah, we'll note your objections. Who else? Okay, the rest is fine. The report is considered agreed to. Honorable members, you will be happy to know that concludes the business of the day, and that you may now go home or just turn around and switch off your gadget and enjoy a cup of tea. Happy evening, honorable members.
Thank you very much, Deputy
The lights are off. The lights are off. The lights are off.
Long live the chair.
The lights are off.